Ladies and gentlemen, thanks all for listening. I'm Guido from the Goal Trainers. This is the True Potential Show. Today, Marjon van Opijnen is here. Marjon, you're the founder of Embodiment Lab. You're working as a breath coach and trauma therapist. And yeah, you're about many more things, but breath, I read it on your website as well. One of the most vital things, what it means to be a human and alive. So you work with that already for a long time. Marjon, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Let's
Thanks for
breathe in
inviting me.
Yeah, let's breathe in. I want to breathe in for a second. Like, it's when people are doing something with posture and people are listening to a story of them. You see people are getting like more. Here's a physiotherapist. Let me sit straight, you know. And with you, I have that like with breathing, you know, like Marjon is here. Okay, breathe deep in. So how come that you're so fascinated by breath?
Breath. Breath is so vital to everything, and so there's many things to breath. It's our first need to live, and so we can live for 4 weeks or 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, but 3 minutes without breath or without oxygen is going to be a challenge. And so it's very vital, and the breath also has a lot of, let's say, rhythm, and it's the rhythm I like to see the things that I see in nature, to also so everything breathes. It's the planet breathes, we breathe, animals breathe, and so it's so vital, and it connects us all as well. The breath is something, I don't know who has all inhaled the air that I'm inhaling now, and who's going to inhale the air that I'm exhaling now. And so it's in that sense, it connects us all as well. And so that's more the spiritual side to breath. And at the same time, I see that breath is so vital in how we feel as well. So if there is any emotion, we start breathing in a different way. So I personally, I don't believe in the perfect way of breathing. So often when you hear people talk about breath, and there are you have to count, you have to do this, you have to do that, and that's very functional. So it's very functional to get more awareness on our breath. But at the same time, I believe that every situation has its own way of breathing. So if I want to sit on the couch, I want to breathe slower than when I'm cycling on my racing bike or when I'm running. And either way of breathing is perfectly fine for that particular moment. So for me, the question is, how can we breathe in a more relaxed way? So how can we create space for our breath so that we can do it easier and in a more relaxed way in any situation, and recover from any tension in our breath in an easier way and faster. So if I'm stressed, I'll breathe more tight and higher up. Or if I'm in a triggering situation, that also affects on how I feel and how I breathe. And so if I can then recover easier, I can release it easier as well.
Yeah, interesting. So now I'm curious, like, how do you deal then with the question? Because I had this question already. I'm quite a fan of conscious breathing during exercises, and then people are sometimes, yeah, you're really focusing on breathing, eh? And then I'm like, yeah, it's super important. And then you're sometimes giving a workshop, for example, in breath, and that takes like 90 minutes or 2 hours. Do you get the question? If yes, how do you deal with it? Like, I know already how to breathe, right? Right? But do you get the question sometimes, and how do you deal with it?
You mean the question that people, when they think that they know how to breathe because it's so natural?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first thing we do in life, and it's the last thing we do.
Yeah.
And we even have sayings, you take your first breath or you let your last breath. go out. And we do it
Okay.
about like 16 to 20,000 times a day. So if you turn 80, just imagine how many times you actually breathe during your entire life.
Yeah, you're really good in it.
Yeah, and at the same time, I hear people sometimes say, like a while ago, a guy told me, like, I've never thought about my breath. And yeah, indeed, I do it. I do it so many times. I'm not aware of it at all.
Mm.
And we're very unaware, and we have very little knowledge on how breath is related to our nervous system, for example, how it's affecting how we feel, our mood, our thoughts even. And it's like a mutual thing. If I breathe in a way, my body starts thinking like, oh, there is stress, so I can create that by a certain breath. Or if there is stress, I start breathing according to that stress. So there's always that mutual relation between my breath and my body. And we just really unaware about that. And often, indeed, people sometimes say like, yeah, what can I do wrong? It's such a natural process. And then when we do exercises or we work on creating more space for breath, and often people tell me after the workshop, like, oh, wow, I feel much more space. I feel more relaxed. I feel more lively as well. And I have less thoughts or concerns. But you have to experience the effect. I can tell you, but you have to experience it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you talked about the relationship between breath and thoughts. And how does that work then? Like, are the thoughts related to the type of breathing that you do, or how? Do you have like an example?
Yeah. So let me think of an example. Mm, um, if I was thinking of an exercise, but then I have to create a thought for
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe a little
We
bit
can do that as well, or
with emotions. Sorry.
yeah, we can do that as well. I mean, that's totally fine. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be able to, and maybe I can then share the experience.
Yeah. So, and even people watching this can join us as well. But
Yeah,
let's connect it to emotions.
yeah,
So let's do a small exercise with emotions and see how our breath can actually make it easier for us.
yes,
So I will take you through a guided exercise then now. So I have like movement exercises, but now I will take you through a guided one. So if
yes.
you can sit in a relaxed way. So if you lean against your backrest, that is okay. And
I don't have it, but for the people
okay,
listening,
yeah,
so you can just relax.
yeah. So if people just watching this and want to join in, then go and sit in a relaxed way in your chair. And if there is a backrest, lean to your backrest, but in a relaxed but awake way, so that you sit up a little bit straight and don't, yeah. And feel your feet on the floor. You can put them flat on the floor next to each other. Your legs in the chair. And just watch your breath for a moment. See how you're breathing in this particular moment. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Can you really notice that you're taking air and letting go of air without any judgment? Just watch. And also here you can watch in a way knowing that this is the perfect breath for you in this particular moment. You don't need to make any change. And then I'd like you to visualize an image of a recent situation where you felt really challenged, where you maybe were really scared, where you felt angry, maybe a situation where you felt really stressed, or where you were afraid of something or sad, just any challenging situation for you. And then notice what happens in your body. What happens in your legs, in your limbs, in your arms, in your torso. And also watch your breath again. What happens to your breath? Does it go faster, slower? Do you still breathe? Maybe you're holding your breath when you visualize this situation. Do you still take really air and let go of air? Okay, and then you let go of this situation. And we're going to do a small breathing exercise. So we're going to breathe in for 4 counts and then breathe out for 6 counts, and then we stop for 2 counts. So you can start doing that. Breathe, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a pause. Inhale, exhale, and a pause. Inhale, exhale, and a pause. Twice more. Inhale, exhale, and a pause. Once more. Inhale, exhale, and a pause. And then you let go of the breathing technique and you go back to your regular breathing. And then for another time, I'd like you to put that visualize that image once more. That image of that challenging situation that you were in recently. And notice what happens in your body now. Is there any difference to the first time that you visualized this image? And notice what is happening in your breath. Is there any change in your breath as well? And just notice. And then slowly you let go of that image again. And you bring your attention back into your room and just shake that off if you wish. And we can come back in the talk. Yeah, so
Nice.
what did you experience?
Yeah, so first when you said, okay, pick up that situation, I felt like some contraction. And, it was also like a little emotional situation, and I also thought myself like, hey, what's happening? I feel some contractions specifically in the stomach. And like after the breathing rounds, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, 2 seconds pause. So have to be a little bit rhythmicality, find that in it. I would actually not mind to go on for a little bit more, maybe some people as well. So it was nice. And then when I thought back about the situation, actually felt so light thinking back to the situation, it was really light and almost so light that I thought like, can I not think about something else? And I was searching for another challenging situation just to see like how would that situation feel if I just to test. But I felt like the space between the contraction that I had before and now like the light, totally you have space to reset your thought of something on that situation. It felt really spacious.
Yeah, So it's great that you noticed that. Just to give you a little bit of background to the exercise as well, what we actually did was that when you challenged in a situation, usually your activating part of the nervous system turns on. So that means that we have, and that part is also about fighting or flight. So that actually means that we want to either fight that situation or we want to run away. For both actions, we need more activity in our body to be able to do that. And the whole nervous system makes sure in our body that actually happens. So the heartbeat goes up, the breathing goes up, the energy goes towards the limbs so that we can actually get into action, hormones start being produced. And by the breathing exercise, we prolonged the exhale. And the exhale actually turns on the more relaxing nervous system, meaning that we get more distance to the situation and our body relaxes more. Therefore, our emotions and thoughts actually change. And the energy goes back to the core of the body, heartbeat, breathing goes down. So there's a lot of reactions in the body to that as well. And that's what we worked with. Yeah, just to give the background to it as well.
That's fascinating. So that's all what I experience now. And so you can use a simple technique already when you experience just a little bit of stress, maybe also on this situation that's currently happening. We're in a crisis right now. And it feels almost like, I saw this comparison between Second World War and the time that we're now in. And, my grandmother is born in the Second World War, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. But, maybe it does for some people. Thanks for the exercise, Marjon. And what is your take on this current situation?
Yeah. What do you mean by take? Is that like my vision on it, or is it more
your vision and also your vision, and that's of course what I'm curious in, but also like how do you go with it? Like what changes for you?
Yeah, if I look at the situation at the moment, it really differs. Some days I'm really like, whoa, what's going to happen to society, to the economy, what's going to happen in the embodiment lab with my business, how long is it going to take, how many people is it going to affect, and then if I really get into that, then I can get really concerned. So I just try to really watch the news on fixed times in a day and not just to go into statistics and read every article that I see on Facebook, because then, I watched like a tegenlicht last Saturday, and then during the night I thought like, oh, man, what's going to happen? And I don't want that because it's useless. We don't know. Nobody knows. It's
Nobody knows.
Yeah, so it's also a matter of how to deal with that that I don't know, and that nobody knows, and I see many people react to that in different ways, and other days there's something comforting in it as well. It makes life very simple. I have to say that I can be by myself very easily, so I'm not really suffering from anxiety because I'm by myself at home, which is also different for many people. So everybody has its own take on being alone a lot, and so in that sense, and I still have my contacts and my intimacy, which is also different for different people. So that is my personal reaction to it, and it really depends on the day. I kind of like that it also challenges me in doing things in another way, and my whole practice is being turned into a studio so that I can do online sessions, which is interesting, and it's interesting to see the impact of that as well. Professionally, I find it a very interesting period as well, interesting from a therapist point of view to see how everybody deals with that in a different way, and all the different survival modes. Where some are very clear, that some people go in conspiracy theories, and others they just start searching for all statistics and put that up in social media, and others they start praying or applauding for like all the healthcare people, and everything has somehow to do with getting a kind of a grip on the situation, because somewhere deep inside we want to understand and we want to have a grip on it. And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and one other thing to that as well, what it really made me think of in all my work, we spoke a little bit about this before we went into this talk as well, but in all my work on embodiment in the new economy, I've been working a lot with the notion, which in Dutch is called de menselijke maat. And I'm still looking for the perfect English term, but it's something beyond my imagination or beyond my human dimension, which doesn't mean that it is within my own energy field, but it is what can I still understand, what can I still relate to in a certain way. And this whole situation really triggered me to think more about what actually is that notion of human imagination or human dimension, menselijke maat. Because fighting an invisible virus is something beyond what I can actually imagine, and it's at the same time so real.
Yeah. It's beyond your own imagination, right?
Yeah, and all the reactions to it, and all the regulations that we need to comply with, and which I do because I do take it serious. But it really seems to be rules, because I can't really get grip on something so invisible. And I also see people objecting against the rules. And I think partly that's because of this, that why actually are we fighting? And we find it hard to deal with what we don't really understand or can't see or can't relate to. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and that also has to do with that we never experienced something like this. Not like in this big way, right?
No, we've never, and everything seems to be so makeable. We've created that makeable society. I mean, living in a society with where especially generations after me, I think, have never experienced scarcity. And we now experience scarcity in space, in and economically probably as well, and scarcity in connection and in meeting people or being able to visit your parents or grandparents or so we all of a sudden have to deal with that real life scarcity.
Yeah, and then for us in the Netherlands, actually we are quite lucky, so to speak, because we can still go outdoor and to nature and stuff. And like there are literally people in the world that cannot go out of their house, only to the supermarket. I spoke with a friend of mine in the Canary Islands recently, and I was like, so that's really crap, right? Like he doesn't even have a balcony, and he can only go out to go to the supermarket. So in this, your work actually becomes so much more scalable and vital as well for people, because you can really do something just from the comfort, so to speak, of your own chair. So do you have something online, like directly with people that find this interesting, that say like, whoa, this is nice, this technique, can we do some more of this online things of Marjon?
Yeah, I'm giving one breath session a week. And it's bi-weekly, it's on Tuesday evenings, and the other weeks it's on different evenings. So coming Friday, there is, which is the 24th of April. I'm not sure when you're going to post this.
Maybe a little bit after, to be honest, but we will talk about it.
So yeah, on my website there's the whole agenda, embodimentlab.nl, and also on Facebook, I have my whole agenda. So I give bi-weekly online breath sessions, and I find it really powerful. And probably I'm going to continue that even after the crisis, to do that like once every second week or so online. And then I have my live sessions hopefully then as well, because it is a different dimension that we work with. But they're both powerful. They both have their own qualities. And I'm currently working on a 5-day, I'm still thinking on how I'm going to do it, but a 5-day breathe in flow, live in flow. And that is like an online thing that you can just watch whenever you like. And I'd like to create a similar thing for self-regulation, so balance and relaxation in challenging situations. So there are some things that I'm currently developing, which are useful now, but also useful in any situation. Because yes, the current situation is stressful and unexpected, and very impactful, but our whole lives are. But we've created like that whole stressful life, and being on our computers and social media and meeting deadlines in business, wanting to be part of so many things in social life, and which is creating a lot of stress for our system. So in that sense, the stress has already turned into a certain default in how we deal with our body.
Yeah, the stress becomes almost like a normal mode or something.
Yeah, and only when
See it as us, like we are the stress or something, almost like it's normal to stress. That's what I heard people say as well sometimes. I don't even know.
Yeah, and we even tend to get addicted to it because it gives like also that great energy that we really like, and but it's not healthy in the end. And we haven't learned to not do anything and just to sit, or to really listen to our bodies, what we really need in the moment. We don't learn that, not at school, not at home. And but our example is actually parents that are both having a job and running from one place to the other place, and pick up kids and go to kindergarten and what have you. So the example that we get is stressful, and we don't learn how to deal with that, or how to regulate ourselves.
Yeah. So interesting, right? Like one day to another, suddenly your whole perspective on what is freedom, like totally flips around, and like the embodiment lab, like your company, right, is actually quite like preparing or shifted already towards like whatever way we will continue in this crisis situation. So you can shift quite good to the new. You were telling me already before, like I'm now almost feeling like a technology worker. I'm shifting my room every time there's a different something happening in my room, and I can manage it. At the same time, there are so many people that losing their jobs, their situation. Do you have people around you that you also have? Did you give tips? Like, for example, what are your tips to deal with it if you just lost something, like your hours in your job, or you just lost your full job? Do you have some tips for that? Like, what would you do?
Tips.
Or insights, like, well, because I can imagine, like, and it can be very related to what you're doing, because with breath you can change your perspective, what we just found out. So it might also be applicable towards bigger challenges.
I insights. First of all, don't blame yourself for the reaction that you have to a situation. And just to give a very simple example from my trauma background, if there's two people in a car accident, in the same car accident, one gets out of the car, shakes it off, and walks on. And the other person gets out of the car and gets heavily traumatized and needs treatment. So the reaction of people to situations is very different depending on our background. So we have our survival mechanisms that if it really gets challenging, that's the first that actually comes up in our system, our survival mechanisms. So don't blame yourself for whatever, however you are dealing with this situation, but try to become aware of that. What am I actually doing? And what are the feelings that I'm moving away from? So if I tend to just go into the news and look at statistics and what is it actually that I don't want to feel? Because then I'm moving like somewhere out there, whereas there's a lot of things happening inside myself. And it's the same with, so what I see is there's people met with reactions that we seem to appreciate more, like for example applauding or doing meditations for the world and things like that. But there as well, what actually is happening inside me that makes me doing this? And is it my authentic reaction to something, or is it my way to, okay, then at least I have a little bit of control and I deal with something? And to acknowledge the feelings that we have. It's what I said in the beginning as well. Some days I'm scared. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm resisting the rules and I'm get like a rebel, like a pure rebel that thinks like, I'm not going to do that. And some days I'm like, okay, this is just a current reality and I need to deal with that. And a lot of embodiment practice helps me with that as well. Because if we go into those feelings, they can get really big. And if they get really big, they can overwhelm us and we get in another trip of thoughts and, oh, it's all so bad and blah, blah, blah. So it also needs, and with embodiment, I would look beyond mindfulness and meditation. So the body wants to release tension through movement and through shaking. And so it's not just the mind with willpower to look at it, but also allow the body from bottom up to really move with that energy of what is actually going inside of us, and allow the body to release and that energy through movement, through dance, stretching, for example. And playing sports can be a very good outlet for people as well, and or yoga practices, because that gives a lot of stretching. But I also would advise to use those kind of practices, but at the same time to also use practices that allow the authentic or spontaneous movements of the body, because the body knows what it needs. It's the mind that we put in between the body and what we actually do.
Yeah, exactly. And we were gonna construct with our mind every step that we take with our body, and there we let this become too much of a dictator, so to speak.
Yeah, or we withhold ourselves. So from making the movement. So if I really feel like this, for example, like blah, blah, you know, I think like, oh, that is crazy. I can't make those movements. Let's just make it a little bit like, oh, so. Well, actually, the movement I want to make is much bigger, and it doesn't need to take
and much more expressive.
Yeah. So can we just, and you can do that at home. It doesn't need to be in public or something like that, but allow that to happen without putting the head in between. And I know it's very difficult because it took me years to really allow, you know, the real stuff to happen. So it's very easy to say, but we're very programmed to not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting, right? So is that also where you work on with trauma? Because you're also a trauma therapist and you're helping people to get over certain aspects that they already trauma or they're walking with for years. How do you work with trauma? Maybe that's the question I want to ask.
Yeah, usually what we see in trauma, it is what I already said, we can have one trauma and different reactions to the same incident. And what often happens is that the situation itself is very overwhelming. And due to the overwhelm, the body generates a lot of energy, but we often can't live that energy. And so it's often not so much the happening itself, but it's the reaction to it, or the way how we've been able to release the stress from the body. And if we can't release the stress from the body after the trauma, we will just store it somewhere in the body. And so we can just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. And I often get, because I work from an embodied perspective, I often get people in my practice that did a lot of cognitive therapy on their traumas, but it's still stuck in the body, meaning that if they get in certain situations, they still react as if it were the trauma. And you see that especially in development trauma. And so what I do is I work with finishing the movement that people couldn't make in the time that the trauma actually happened. So if you wanted to run, can we actually finish that movement so that the body can release that energy? And that, of course, takes much more than just now we go running, and then much deeper in
You
the
just don't go
body.
for a run. No, that would not. It would be very nice if that would be the solution.
Yeah, that would be great if that would work.
Yeah. So no, but how does that work? Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
So you're noticing that from a certain perspective. You're seeing, hey, it was. I remember that's. I think Roland was it. Said like you're stuck in an exhale. So you're standing like, for a shock reaction or something, right? Or is it an inhale? Like you're stuck in this position that you're standing and you're like, but and then you notice something. How do you observe that?
Yeah, it's observing. You see the body patterns of people, and I can often see whether people are breathing or not. But the main thing is that whatever I see, if the other doesn't feel it or sees it, then I can't work with it. So it needs to come from my client to to say what's happening in the moment. And there's often a lot happening that I can't even see, because I always say in my breath sessions as well, I can touch you, I can give you some suggestions in movement or things, but if it doesn't fit what you are at, then follow your own flow, because I always look at it from the outside, and I don't pretend that I know what's going on inside you. And if others do that with me, I get pretty annoyed about somebody if others think that they know what's going on inside me, because it could be right, it could not. Maybe it's right, but I can't feel it. So usually I work with what clients bring up in the moment.
Wow, that's interesting. I think there's a lot of great topics already that we covered. Marjon, I'm curious. Like this is a question for a perspective, and so many times you made, and that's personally. Let's talk about my steps. I made a step. I think like, wow, if I would have known this already when I was 20 or when I was 18, I would have done things way different from that point. I'm curious, like you started your practice already quite a long time ago, from my perspective. Let's say you were just starting out again, right? What could you, as the embodied version of Marjon today that you are, say to the Marjon that just would start out her practice, or ask maybe to give for, you would have a conversation just like this with Marjon that just starting out. What could you say to her that would benefit her?
What would I say? Um, I think I'm not sure when I would say something. I think if I'm just now getting a picture of me and her, like, and I think I would stand behind her and allow her to walk her path. But give her a kind of a containment for that. Because the person I'm now is because of her experiences and her how she lived her life up to now. And now it's like I make it a third person even, which is
Exactly,
not
exactly.
true.
That's I like that.
But
It's like a book.
I couldn't be the person now without her. So why would I want to change her? Because then I would be a different person now. And it's all the experiences that she had and she confronted herself with, and the choices that she made, that makes me sitting here. But I think what and then I get back to the I form of talking. What I sometimes missed is that containment of and then I also think like, oh yeah, that whole, if I think about it, containment, it's like that whole ancestor peoples behind me. And I wish I could have made more contact with that. Okay, I live in a whole bedding. I live in a whole bedding of history in my family, but also of a whole bedding of society and of the people around me. And so I would be there for her to be part of that.
Yeah, just as like an support in the back, like go walk your path.
Yeah.
And you can be your own support, right? And that's also what you want to empower people with doing their working with trauma, doing breath work on a deeper level. And especially also what you told me before we started recording, like you have also a way that you view like the new economy and the transition that we're going to make, or that we almost are. Yeah, we have to do something different, right? Like that's sort of what we talked about. How do you see like business in the new economy that we're shifting towards?
Yeah, it's interesting because it actually business is part of that container of that what we create as society, and what you just said, to give that support to yourself. And I think as humans we have we are autonomous and we connect. And so I can, from my autonomous position, I can give that support myself. And yet, especially in these like 1.5 meter stuff and what have you, we can so much see how we long for that connecting as well. And I think that is one of the things that is currently missing in business, is that we kind of lost our humanity in how we run business. And so how do we bring humanity back in business? And what then is humanity? And that is what the embodiment for me stands for as well. So embodiment is being in that I power, in my own authenticity, and to embody all the actions that I do. So that also means that they come from inside, but I can also feel, not just think of what I want to create, but also feel like, oh yeah, this is really coming out of me. And I can connect to that emotionally and physically. But it also means that if I do something as a business leader, that I can also look at the consequences that it has for another. So if I, for example, create something and make money with something, that all the way back in the supply chain causes a kid of 6 years old to work in a mine, can I go there, sit down on a stone and watch that kid living his life and feel really take that in and feel what it does to me if I see that kid living its life and the way how it's treated? and if I can just embody that, be there with my full emotions, my physical sensations, and I can contain that, then probably what I did was also good to the other. And it goes one level further. What are the system that we are in? So there's 3 levels. It's me, myself, it's the business, and the business itself. Do we really live internally what we would want to? It's how do I relate to the other? And how do I personally relate to the other? How do I, as a business, relate to every other that is affected by me and every other that is affecting me? And there's that 3rd level. What is the position in the society what's my vision on the society that I want to create? How do I want to look that looks like? And
Yeah.
what is the role that I take in that as an individual and as a business?
Wow. Marjon, that's a great. I think that's a great message to share and to finish our conversation up with, and also for people to take like and really consider like what are they gonna do in this new world that is emerging from now, right? So Anna, thank you so much for your words and your exercise. And where can people find you best, Marjon?
On my website, embodimentlab.nl.
Embodimentlab.nl.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. That's I will type it in below
Yeah.
when we share this video. And yeah, for now, thank you so much, Marjon. And yeah, we'll see each other in the future and hopefully soon, physical again.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for this really, for me, inspiring interview as well.
Awesome.
And it's nice to hear myself talk in that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you so
And,
much, Marjon. Embodiment Lab.
yeah.
And we're out in 3, 2, 1.